Thank you, Mel. It is an area it surges up inside me as we speak about it, because it feels intuitively so important and so neglected. All I can say is it was my way of understanding the universe when I was born. It is the way that every creature, and it's cross species. Every creature that I've seen knows the world through play. My understanding is that as human beings, our first 5 years are by far we learn the most of any other time of our lives. And our sole way of understanding the universe is not through words and through clever stuff, academics. It's through this extraordinary thing, play. And from about the age of 5, it goes down on an exponential curve for the rest of our lives. And sometimes, unfortunately, the measures that I came across at a certain point indicated that people lost any new creativity. It was as if their lives became completely constrained by rigid routines, and all that the creativity had gone. But intuitively, I would say for me, it's the best way of engaging. It's the best way of being curious. It's the best way of learning. It's the best way of feeling truly alive within the play. When I talk about play, and there'll be little bits of it that I'll mention, but not pre-thought play, not a game where you've got preset rules, but where you engage like in a sandpit or with a whole bunch of toys that you've never seen for the first time. No one's telling you how it should be, and something surfaces. And I would suggest that you and I, even this conversation right now, part of its scariness and part of its incredible joyfulness is that we don't know what's going to happen next. I have no idea what your next question will be. You and I are playing our way through this.
Absolutely.
And in that way, it's delightful, Mel.
Oh, I agree, James. Thank you. I'm curious, why do you think it is that we lose our creativity and our sense of joy around play and our ability to play as we get older? What's your sense of that? You mentioned rigidity and routine. What's your sense of what you think gets in the way of that we forget how to play? We forget what it could mean for us.
I think that there's an innocence around play which is very beautiful, and I think that there is a natural difficulty that the very natural child will feel in relation to the world, that there needs to be some degree of routine and structure, without which there's no, I'm going to use the word, no freedom to play. One needs those nap times. Just imagine if one's playing with no nap time, or no food time, or no toilet time.
Yeah.
Those built-in structures are very necessary, and then one's got to learn how to engage with others, because otherwise one doesn't learn how to share. One can become preoccupied with one's own play. So there are natural elements around socialization. I think that with the nature that school systems have gone, that school is becoming so important. I think it's done this since the Industrial Revolution, that suddenly it's so serious, the world out there, that there's something that squeezes us like a constrictor. It's like the industrial world or commercial world is like some kind of python that squeezes the creative life juice out of us until we like it. And so that's my gut feel. On the one hand, one does need those structures. On the other hand, they've become so structured that players, even being regarded as naive, and simplistic, and childish rather than childlike. And words like childish to someone who plays, it's so shocking. And yet you'll always get it. You get someone playful, and sooner it's almost like a role in a group that will be going, but you're just childish. Grow up.
Yeah.
And it can really go right into the heart of you.
And James, just thinking about when you and I have partnered and co-facilitated together, I've been very aware of how very intentional you've been in bringing moments of play, no matter how serious the session might be, or the focus is on us building a very important strategy together as a group. You've been very deliberate and intentional in bringing moments of play. Tell me about that. Why are you so intentional when it comes to moments of play in a serious corporate workshop or strategy session, for example?
as you say that, and as I say, a lot of these things emerge in the play of you and my interactions. I was thinking it's interesting that play is not regarded as the serious business. So play is one part of a polarity, and then serious, like real world, is the other. The two are not linked, and for me it's a tragic thing. So my response would be, I think play can be serious. I've sat with people who are dying, literally dying of cancer. I sat with someone within the last month dying, and yet in the interaction, I wouldn't use the word play. I would use the word genuine engagement, genuine smiling. We were thinking about it. We were wondering about a few things. The medical world, and having to deal with some of the craziness, but there was a genuine smile, but it was engaging. And the person who was dying, we were wondering together about what goes beyond death. And it's interesting because it felt playful, but in a different way. I would use the word engaging, so that I use that extreme example because for me it's still playful using the word engaging. It was still completely, I have a beautiful memory of the last time I saw this person before they in fact died within a few weeks of that. And the feeling that it was immensely respectful, connecting, and deeply learning out of the curiosity of the engagement. He was saying things and I was saying things together, and we were both learning from that interaction. And so if I think about that, if I think of you, Mel, I think engagement is one of the things that you are able to generate so beautifully. And I've watched you do this. That groups of people, some of the stuff I've learned from you around little groups of people getting together, 6 or 7 at a table, really genuinely speaking deeply and honestly and truthfully, which you do beautifully. I've learned that very much from you. That I would call engagement. And out of it comes some vortex. You would have seen it thousands of times over, but it's like a group wisdom emerges. It's very equalizing. Each person has got something valuable to play with, and they're offered like a toy, and someone else takes it. But instead of stealing it and saying, well, this is mine, which might be an example, the space you create for them is one of dignity, respect, and each person's voice allows a flow to start to happen, like a dance. And that is where the play that I've watched you create play. I've seen people just vibrantly, lively interacting in rooms that you have facilitated where I've worked with you. And I would regard that as play. And you might say, but what's the point of that? And it's a silly question because it's everything.
It's everything. That is so true. James, you're reminding me of, you're so right. You're reminding me of the process that you're referring to, which includes something that I hadn't thought of before, is just how we also bring in cookies and markers and crayons and color, and there's flip chart paper on the tables, and the invitation is to draw and doodle. That's playfulness. That's an engagement, but we're playing with crayons. And so I'm reminded, of the importance of let's be serious about playing because of what it could potentially unlock. And so that dance between the very strategic thinking, but also the creative thinking, this interaction that can happen. So that's a beautiful reminder. Thank you, because I'd actually forgotten that there's this very intentional crayons and color and drawing moment in a process like that. The methodology I'm reminded of is World Cafe, conversations at small tables. And your word around engagement is exactly that. So whether we call it play or engagement, it's about connection and connecting with each other.
It really is, Mal. I was watching your hands as you were describing it, and it went like this.
Yes.
And as I watched that, I loved it. I don't know what it meant to you to be like this. You were talking about the seriousness and the play, but I got a sense of 2 interweaving energies.
Yeah.
But it was your symbol. I just noticed it. What did it mean to you, if I could ask?
Well, just how integrated it is, and it's not separate. And I think that's what I'm realizing in my original question to you was around creating moments of play within a serious workshop. But actually, it's all interconnected. What is it, what if the work as play, strategy as play, crafting an action plan, that is play. And so why separate it? Work is play, play is work. Yeah, so the interconnected and interlinking of it, and how important it is for it to be integrated, so that sense of whole and whole human beings to show up, all of us, that if we start taking ourselves too seriously all the time, that's not fun. So yeah, the importance of lightness, joy, and fun.
Well, I completely agree, and I loved the sense of it, because the feeling I got was the energies that go up the human spine. You were speaking a bit earlier offline about some yoga, and I was just thinking about the two energies that we carry in our bodies, one which is the male energy and one that's the female, and both men and women carry the two energies, and the two interflow. And what's lovely about them is that each has got a valid place. I think that the structure of play, I think about the permission, because I don't think unless one gives oneself permission to play, that one will play. You know, a child that's constantly being fussed over won't have time to play. There won't be playtime. And so let's call it the structure that might use, let's say, a World Cafe. It's a permission. It says, hey, everybody, here's something to play with. Here are some crayons, and you set them out so beautifully. I smile. You're one of the most beautifully laid out World Cafes I've ever seen, are yours. And with all these beautiful colors and the neatly laid out sheets of paper which form the tablecloths, there is a sense of, okay, what will we do with this? And there's normally a little bit of a context and a structure. And I think it is valid. It's valid that it's got an intention. It might be a question, or it might be 10 minutes or 5 minutes, but that's the amount. And in a way, it gives us a permission, and it's very necessary. And that can be the same if one was a dancer. I know you are a dancer, and you're very good with yoga. You know, if I use sound, I'm looking at a little amplifier next to me. Unless I find time to plug that guitar in and to play with it, that you could call it as a structure. And that structure could be permission. And without that permission, it's never going to happen. It's like one goes almost structurelessly from one thing to another, bouncing around, but without the freedom of that focus. And there is a need to focus. You and I decided that we were going to have this interaction today, and that has become a focus. It means that I'm not chatting, on my phone while you and I interact. I'm not fussing over something else and doing something, or even playing with something else. Playing a guitar would be taking the focus off this play that I'm having with you. So I think that interweaving of the male and the female principle, one which is around structure, one which is around flow, is a very valid way of looking at the importance of play. And it's very relevant to work contexts. Because sometimes one needs a permission, one needs sometimes a structure, and sometimes one needs to allow something, as I know you're very good at doing, to just go. I've heard you say, hey, look, give them another 7 or 8 minutes. It's almost like extra freedom. Yeah. Because it's right in the flow.
Yes. Oh, James, there's a body of work known as liberating structures that comes to mind, and I love the paradox of that, liberating structures. And I feel it's a little bit of that in play as well. If I think of moments with you whether it's in a workshop or just sitting across in a restaurant, having a cup of coffee together, there has often been intentional instructions. So here is a side plate. We're going to put some salt in the side plate. You're going to have a turn. You're going to draw a picture with your fingers in the salt on the side plate, and then it'll be my turn. So there's a set of instructions, which is the structure, in order for us to liberate and see what emerges, so the creativity to come. And so, yeah, that's just something that I'm holding as well, the awareness of the need for structure, the rules of engagement. Here's how we're going to do this in order to see what we can liberate, what we can unlock, what potential we can tap into. What do you think?
I love it. And funny enough, when you spoke about that liberating structure, it's sort of like an oxymoron, because you'd be going, how can the one make sense if the other, because the two are contradictions. And I was reminded of a book by one of the many writers I've come across. Edward de Bono wrote a great deal on lateral thinking and liberating creativity. But funny enough, because he put them all in books, many of them are very left brain structured ways of creating it. The book that I'm thinking of is called Serious Creativity. And again, it's an oxymoron. How can you be serious and creative?
Yeah.
And so again, I guess it's important to recognize that we are like a parent to our child self. And so if I bring in another lens, I'm both a child of 3 or 4 years old who just desperately wants to play with everything and anything. And that's all I would do all day if I could. Genuinely, I would want to spend my days playing. And to a degree, I think I do. And then there's an older self saying, that's enough now. Come on, you need to go and eat something, or you need a nap, or you need to go and exercise. You need to go for a swim. Whatever those things are, it's almost like you've got the structure and then the play. And both of them exist within the self. And once you're aware of it, you can interplay, you can give permissions. Each playtime, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the beginning, middle, and an end are very important, because otherwise, if there's no end to something, it then becomes exhausting. It needs the beginning, the middle, and the end.
James, you work with leaders in their personal capacity as a clinical psychologist. You work with leaders in an organizational capacity as leaders of teams. How would you help somebody who doesn't know how to play? They have lost all access to that part of themselves. How would you, what advice would you give to someone to start rediscovering that playfulness, that child that lives within all of us that we may have forgotten all about? What are your thoughts?
So I think you'd probably find parallels, Mel. I generally find that the play, when one has got some playmates and one starts to realize that in the interaction, as you and I are doing, I'm completely engaged. I'm loving every second of this. I've lost all sense of time right now. Yeah. If one is able to share that with somebody else and to give people, because I think, as an example, I've got quite a close relationship. I'm going to call him my brother. One of my 3 brothers is a brilliant intellectual. But I'd sometimes feel that he's very isolated and alone, because in this world of intellect, he doesn't really know how to interact. He's very skillful in his field, and it means that large amount of the time he is giving prescriptions or diagnoses, but he's lost the interaction. And what's interesting is that in moments of interaction, he comes alive again. He loses his isolation. And so, to answer the question more directly, if one can, through some form of small group interaction, often in circles, often where I can look at the various people that I'm going to be engaging with, like you and I are doing right now, and when we're looking at each other eye to eye, and we wonder together about something, it's one of the most wholesome and healing things. One loses sense of time. One realizes that one's got something to contribute, but not everything. I realize that I'm learning from you, although you've come to me with, asking about certain things about play. I realize I'm learning from you, so I don't know everything. But in this interaction comes this wonderful unfolding and a kind of a group wisdom. And I think that that's something that one can offer quite quickly, and which is often life-changing for the people I've worked with. So that's part one, just engaging people on whatever it is that they need with certain permissions, maybe a few guidelines. If you find yourself speaking for too long, make sure there's time for everybody else. Allow in the 5 minutes that everyone gets a minute. So I'll give a guideline, as I've watched you do sometimes, that people have the sense of we share.
Yeah.
But the second thing is, I'll often get people to talk about something that inspires them. And this is it's my choice of icebreaker. Yeah. I've discovered hundreds of icebreakers, of which I've tried many. The one that opens up engagement, communication, interest, and a long-term memory of each other. What inspires you? And when this person, I can think of people who've spoken in the 1990s about looking after goldfish, or looking after certain types of roses, or certain types of cars or Vespas. These are things I could probably bore you for many, many minutes with some of the things. I remember each of the person's faces, sometimes their names, just from hearing that one thing about them. I think of you and I think of hip hop dance, Mel. And it's because and it's funny because we're going, what? And there are moments of one's inspiration that just it brings warmth and interest and engagement. And I would say, as one gets curious about that and wonders about permission, when a person gives themselves time to do that, that will lead you into a beautiful realm of possibility around play.
You are bringing me into another question that I have for you, James, which is why? Why is this so important? Why is it so important for us as human beings? Can you share your thoughts?
I can only speak of it experientially. And the experience is of wonder, engagement, humility, deep value. These are the experiences that I have when there's a true form of play, and it's not a game of Monopoly. That's different. It's not that, or even tennis. There's a different quality around competition. And I remember coming across a book, and it was life-changing for me. It was simply called Play to Win, and Every Victory is a Funeral. And I think that this is another thing that gets in the way of our play, is that people think of play as competition with an agenda of, how can I show that I'm better than you? And I think if that is seen as play, that's a massive problem. And I'm not referring to that when you and I are speaking. I'm speaking more of an engagement which is not pre-thought. It's not necessarily pre-ruled. There might be a certain structure, like, today, Melanie, you and I are speaking for roughly an hour about this play. We can shorten it or lengthen it, but that's our rough structure. But it doesn't mean, right, James, here are the rules. Now you must conform to these rules, and this is how that you'll win. This is how I'll win. If that was how it was, I would feel depressed and sad. And yet that's how often I see people playing. I saw a father and a child playing in a field, and it comes to my mind. The father was doing some martial arts, and he was doing this with the son. And the sort of the payoff every time I saw the martial art was that the father would sort of half throw the son to the ground with sort of showing domination, like a big dog over a little dog, showing, I've now beaten you. And my heart broke because the child wasn't having a jolly fine time. The child was only being shown that the father was the dominating alpha male and that the child was nothing. And that, again, is an example of what I would say is a watch point regarding play.
Absolutely. Competition.
Yeah. The question was, why is this important? The feeling is one of engagement, wonder, shared wisdom.
Yeah.
There's a sense of immense something unfolding. As one engages, and I can only describe it as, for example, learning to play a song that someone else has written, which I find very draining. I find I get very exhausted within 15 to 20 minutes of learning a new song that someone else has written. I was working on one yesterday, and it's a lovely song. It's a bluesy song, but I was exhausted after 20 minutes. But I've written songs, and when I write a song, one of them I sent you, it happened to be going to my son, and it was very in the moment. And it was interesting. I lost all sense of time. It took me about 45 minutes. I was completely unaware. I was completely engaged. The thing unfolded, and then it reached its point of completion for that particular context. And I was just so delighted, so engaged, so proud, so happy with it. And it also happened to be a message to my son of a consolation. He was in a very difficult place and was in a low place. And it's interesting, as I sent it to him, it changed his state because he felt deeply heard and understood in the content of the song. And then he became creative and sent something back to me. So there's something engaging, something unfolding, something miraculous and mysterious that happens. It's difficult, if one plays a game. I'd forgotten about that pepper game that you and I played all that time ago.
Yes.
In a long time. But as you brought it back to my life, to my memory, I was reminded of all of the many delightful different images and shapes we put into that pepper on the little plate.
Yeah.
And I haven't played it maybe since then. But what's interesting is I remember there were just lots of amazing images that came out of that, and they're almost like they're wondrous. What we as humans tend to do is say, but that's not that serious, not that important. It's just some shapes on a pepper grinder.
Yeah.
And that's such a pity, because at one level it is enrapturing, and that same principle can be applied to an interaction with someone with a serious intention, earning money, or coming up with a way of keeping your business going.
Yeah.
It's one of the 4 principles of the balanced scorecard. One of them is innovation. So in other words, the 4 structures that almost form the pillars of an organization. If one of them is an innovation, you're going to get a Nokia or a BlackBerry, or an iPod. Where have these things gone? They've gone because they lost the innovation that would keep them going. And so the innovation is also part, I understand, even mutations in our genes. You could say they're mistakes, but at one level, the mutations actually allow us to grow and change and to keep up with changes. So the so-called mistake of creativity, in fact, allows it transforms our way of surviving.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And ideas are, I suppose, like tiny infants that need to be nurtured. So, the opportunity to see what's possible when we come together, engage lightly, playfully, with a sense of something magical that is beyond us as individuals, but accessible when we tap into the collective wisdom or the synergy of others. Very powerful. And then, James, to add on to what you're saying from a neuroscience and from a physiology point of view, the benefit of play also for me is in our ability to laugh. And just from a physiological benefit, that we know the saying, laughter is the best medicine. Just why? Because we're taking deep, hearty breaths. We're using our belly muscles. We using our lungs as we guffaw and have a good time and laugh and smile. We breathe deeply. And when we breathe deeply, we get fresh oxygenated blood throughout our whole being, and very importantly to our brains. So yeah, so powerful. Thank you, James.
It really is. And just an additional one is that laughing together is a huge connector.
Yeah.
Being able to laugh, to create together, is such a connector. It's so, if ever one engages with someone where one creates and comes up with something that has got an output of some kind, you will not forget that. The other won't forget it. You both laugh, and the laughter, as you say, there are also endorphins. There are also there are connectors in the laughter,
Yes.
which, aside from one's own health, forms a new level of engagement with that person, a form of relationship. It's one of the indicators, by the way, of a long-term relationship working. Our ability, a man and a woman's ability, or whoever the partner is, their ability to laugh together is one of the ultimate predictors of longevity of their relationship.
Wow. Yes.
And it can be seen, the people who did this, I don't know if you were there, I don't think you were. There was a workshop that Annie McGee, who works a lot with Daniel Goleman of the emotional intelligence format, they extended some research that was done by Stan Lowe and some other associates, but it was in the mid-90s. And they were doing research on what kept people together the longest. And they took it from, half an hour video clips. They were able to narrow it down from half an hour down to 10 minutes, down to 5 minutes, and eventually down to 1 minute. There were indicators of longevity or shortevity in a relationship. And they could tell if people would be able to stay together or not. And one of them is the ability as humor or laugh or warmth, the warmth that would come from laughter and smiling and engagement. An alternative to that, the opposite, would be criticism, sort of a deep sense of being criticized and being devalued, which would be the exact opposite of this wonderful laughter. The thing about laughter is it's very generous. Everyone can laugh. Everyone can be part of it. It's not taking something away from them.
Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful. Everyone can be part of it. The thing about laughter is everyone can be part of it. Oh, James, I am aware that we could spend many more hours having this conversation, and it has felt very joyful, very playful, very inspiring. Thank you. And I think of the many years of friendship that we've shared, and I have, no doubt why. It's the many moments of laughter. Seldom is there an interaction that we have, whether it's work-related or just having a catch-up cup of coffee, where we have not laughed a lot. So thank you. I treasure it.
I absolutely do too, Mel, and it's an honor.